Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about MFKZ, or Mutafukaz. That's how M-U-T-A. I'm assuming because most theaters can't put that on their marquee. In America, at least, it's MFKZ. It's actually based on a comic book called Mutafukaz. M-U-T-A. So Mutta, that old Mutta, and then F-U-K-A-Z. Animation-wise is pretty much why I saw this. When I saw the trailer to this, I was instantly excited by it. It looked different. It looked interesting. I liked the character design of the main character, Angelino, who kind of has that kind of wonderful animation type character design where it looks simple and easy, and yet if you tried to draw it, you'd see why it takes a tremendous amount of skill to make a character design like that pop as well as it does. I love the movement in it, I love the flow to it, and that's mostly because it's directed by Sojiro Noshimi, whose name I probably didn't say right, but he's like an animation legend. He's worked on things from Akira to Batman Gotham Knights to the Animatrix to the Superman the Animated Series to the Animaniacs. He's been working for a long time, and he worked on also a favorite of mine, Mind Game, Tekken King Crete, which I saw like in theaters even, I don't remember it. I was not a big fan actually. So he's been working for a long time as either an in-between artist or an animation director. So this is his kind of directorial debut, directing this with the creator of the comic book, who is French. This is kind of a French-Japanese co-production. It's between Studio 4 Celsius, I guess, and Ankama Animations, which is a French studio. So it's kind of a French-Japanese hybrid, even though it takes place in a weird future dystopian Los Angeles. So whatever. But it somehow works. You kind of know it's not real LA, but it never tries to play like it's real LA. I would compare this film a lot to the film Nerdland, which it very much wants to be a cult classic, has all this inappropriate stuff, is animated for adults, all those things. But story-wise, it kind of falters, and I just don't get as into it. What this film seems to do quite successfully is its animation is so interesting. Its main characters of Angelino and Vin, and a little bit Wally, but mainly the main two, are kind of so compelling and likable and interesting, and I want to follow them, that despite this film's like kind of weaker, particularly end parts and conclusions and so forth, and kind of plot points that aren't like really fully or explained and gotten into, I still had a really good time at this. You know, I kind of ignored the bad script writing, I guess, and just sort of like went with it in a way. And it's because of the design, it's because of the animation, it's because of everything that's going on. It does a lot of world building, and I'm kind of like interested in this world. Certainly this borrows a lot from They Live, so much so that when I was reading an interview of people who made the film and they bring up They Live, I almost like wanted to roll my eyes because it was just like such an obvious reference what they're doing in this film. Like, you don't even need to fucking say you're influenced by They Live. Like, we all know it's cool. Even though some of the influences are obvious, everything like that, what it does with LA and gang culture and kind of like letting people play in this world that they don't fully really understand clearly, but are kind of playing in such a fantasy world, you're kind of just with it, you know. I think it shows how much we've portrayed LA and everything in American culture, that someone can kind of come and basically make a comic book and a movie out of it, and being from another country is sort of interesting. I mainly think what's cool about this is just seeing someone like Angelino and his character arc, and seeing him go from basically nothing and want to be something, and kind of being sort of confronted like, well, you are something, and he's like, oh, well, I don't want to be that something. Falling in love with this girl who he just sees once, like going on these crazy adventures that he's not exactly understanding why he's in this adventure, what his past is, how that all fits together. And as crazy and weird as that is, it really fits. I don't think it makes a complete arc with any of these characters, really. You're just kind of just on an adventure with them. I could see this being a franchise where they have adventures that I don't really give a shit about, and the animation's so good I would follow it. I don't think this film is for everyone, and maybe it's more for like the immature kind of 13-year-old boy or something like that. It's not the smartest movie or something, but animation-wise, it really pops. And I almost was so in love with the flow of it, and particularly Ben and Angelino, those character designs. The more cartoony it would get, the more interested I was in it. I mean, they're almost like, I know they're animated and drawn to be smaller than everyone else, to look like they don't fit into this world, which was cool. Sort of reminds me not as much of what Gumball does, but the idea of having different character designs in one animated thing is actually something I think is really cool, because I don't know, it's an interesting idea. You can do a lot and play with that. Angelino and Vin and Wally, that whole group, and even Luna, there's like an interestingness to that. It's like they feel so much like outsiders, they feel so different. And I love that style of it. Everyone else is like, if it was just the world without them, this film, I mean, obviously it would be less interesting, but character design wise, it would be less interesting. You know, they have that like cool poppy, cartoony style to them, and I think that really gets you in, because you're like, oh, what is this? You know, it's sort of trying to do like hip-hop dubstep kind of culture, like what they think Americans would like or something, but I kind of find it sort of endearing, and I like it's kind of like kid logic of like living in the city and trying to, you know, have a pizza delivery job and things like that. It's all like, it definitely feels like a virgin's view of what it's like to live outside your parents' house, but it's one that kind of want to see where it goes. You know, that was the most interesting part of this film, and that's kind of why I wanted to see it, because I'm like, I'm curious how this is going to work. I'm curious what this is going to be. You know, I can definitely see like a 13-year-old being really into this film, and kids like getting into this movie and stuff like that, mostly because of the design and the animation. I mean, it has an awesome poster. The idea of this film was something I found really interesting, and I think I kind of just followed it regardless of its plot almost. Like, its plot almost felt secondary to following these characters. When they would really get into it, I'd be sort of interested, because they just hint at things quite a bit, so you're kind of like, wait, what? What is that? What's the journey there? They're kind of like way more interested in Angelino and Vin and their internal struggle and stuff. And then they have cool fight sequences and everything like that. The cast, the American cast at least, had people like Michael Chiklis, Giancarlo Esposito, Jorge Gutierrez is a voice in it, the RZA, Danny Trejo, Vince Staples, who I think is someone. They all actually do a good job. I like the American voice cast. It was actually a pretty good dub, or at least to me. I haven't heard the original dub. I don't know what is the original dub, because it's like played in France and Japan, and I'm kind of wondering, at least on Wikipedia it says its original language is French, so I guess I'm curious what the French dub sounds like. I think they're only playing dubs of it. There was kind of like a more rowdier crowd for this one. Also, the theater had some problems like getting everything started, but I did actually get to see the whole film. They had to like anyway, it was a whole thing. But I kind of like difference in animation. It's something I'm very always pushing towards, and I think this film, Mutafukaz, is something like that. It is a different flavor of animation. It feels like kind of like a weird studio produced, kind of like cheaper, you know, trying to be a cult movie some weird kid in your high school will obsess over. But in this, there's like something more to it. You know, there's an artistry going on. There's kind of a interesting perspective to it. You know, it might be not the most accurate, realistic perspective, but it also has a guy with a huge, almost a black dot as a head. So like, are we really honestly going there? I think there are a lot of films that try to do the urban culture thing. Usually it's best to go into the surreal and go into the weird. There was a turntablism movie I saw and reviewed on here, Wave Twisters, and this sort of reminds me more of that, but if that had a crazy budget. This film will sometimes like change animation styles, like do all sorts of things. It kind of feels like anything can kind of crazy nonsense can sort of happen in this film. I do think it sort of overstays its welcome, and it doesn't really know what to do with all these various plot lines. I know it's based on a comic. I don't know that comic at all. So if you do know that comic and you're seeing this, I'm sure your perspective will be quite different from mine. But as someone who has not read the comic, I would say, you know, story-wise, no, this film doesn't really hold up. But as a watch, and to be someone who is interested in the animation style, and the idea of these two different kind of countries and studios coming together to make this film, it is definitely worth it. It is an awesome animated film. I really, really love watching just the flow of the animation, which is a weird thing to say, but I can do that, I guess. Somehow through the animation and through the likable characters, it gets you through it, despite that it really isn't the best told movie, but sometimes it's just kind of the journey and the experience of the film, which is a term I definitely overuse. But I think the experience of Mutafukaz is kind of a once in a lifetime type of thing, and I think these people all coming together to make this kind of weirdly interesting, earnest kind of cult film is something that really shows the kind of weirdness and oddness that animation can really bring you, and shows you the difference in anime and difference and remind you of the time when a bunch of people would get together to make a uniquely made animated film, and it wouldn't just be like another film from, you know, a studio who has a default style. This is kind of in its own kind of crazy, weird world, you know. It might not really be blowing your mind in terms of, you know, thought and ideas and like storytelling and stuff, but in terms of animation and the flow of the animation and watching this beautiful animation, it really does a lot more and probably gets away with a lot more than it ever really should. But it's such an enjoyable ride, you're just kind of fine with kind of like letting this thing kind of flow by you. So if you've seen MFKZ or Mutafukaz, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.